My spoiled younger brother got engaged to my business partner behind my back and tried to steal my company 3 weeks before our IPO. So we gave him a brutal reality check and slowly ruined his life. After my younger brother Tyler discovered that I had been building a tech company worth millions, he decided he deserved half of everything and seduced my business partner Sarah to get it. Of course, Tyler, the golden child, was shameless and went on to propose to Sarah using my grandmother's ring that he stole from my apartment while planning to force me out of my own company. I found it extremely hard at the beginning, especially since Tyler had used my own business plans, my investor connections, and even tried to steal my coding work. We were extremely close through this time period, and my co-founder Marcus helped me through the betrayal. Eventually, I got over it and found an amazing venture capitalist named Elena who understood corporate warfare and treated me like an equal partner. We got engaged in a beautiful ceremony in Napa Valley, and I was actually planning to take my company public. She even invited my parents to the celebration despite the fact they had attended Tyler's engagement party to Sarah and acted like nothing was wrong. My parents didn't attend our engagement. However, a few more years went by, and eventually my parents reached out begging to reconcile, and this is where the storm started. I agreed to reconcile and came to dinner along with Elena. Tyler was also there with Sarah and their new startup that was failing miserably. Throughout the evening, I noticed Tyler kept making snide comments about how some people get lucky with investors and how Sarah was such an amazing developer, but Elena just held my hand under the table. When it was time for dinner, my parents made a toast. Then out of nowhere, Tyler stood up and said he was so blessed to have such a brilliant partner. He then redirected to me and said, "Bro, I know it must be hard for you because Sarah chose me and we have this beautiful company now, but thanks for your blessing. I know it must be hard for you to be here knowing you can't innovate like I can while I'm about to change the world, but I applaud your courage." This was the moment where Tyler got the biggest reality check of his life. Elena, who had been quietly investigating Sarah's background for months, stood up and said, "Actually, Tyler, we have some news too. We're not only about to close our Series C funding, but I've also just finished acquiring Sarah's previous company through a hostile takeover. As of Monday morning, your girlfriend will be unemployed and facing fraud charges." She then turned to Sarah and continued, "Oh, and those 3 other investors you've been pitching behind Tyler's back, they've all been contacted by my legal team. Tyler, you might want to check your bank account. But here's the best part. Remember that partnership agreement you signed because you were so desperate to start a company? Well, the non-compete clause means you can't work in tech for 5 years. You're about to be a failed entrepreneur with no income, no company, and a girlfriend who's about to be arrested. She's been embezzling from clients, by the way. You think you're so special because you won Sarah. You wanted a woman who steals from everyone, including you. You destroyed my business partnership for a woman who's been systematically defrauding you since your first date. You're such a pathetic man that you bragged about stealing her, not realizing you stole a criminal. I upgraded to someone who would never betray a partner while you downgraded to someone who can't stop committing felonies. How does it feel to know your whole startup is built on stolen money, that your code will be evidence in a federal trial? Do you sleep well at night knowing she's planning to flee the country while you're home coding? Nobody respects a man who steals another man's business partner, but everybody pities a man whose stolen partner turned out to be worthless. Everyone in the room just stared as Sarah's phone began buzzing nonstop. The FBI had started calling her lawyer, and the fraud investigators were demanding documents. But then Tyler started laughing. A slow, unsettling laugh that made everyone uncomfortable. He pulled out his phone and showed us a video. "You think you've won, Elena? I've been recording every private conversation you've had in your office for the past year, including the one where you discussed insider trading before it was public information. That's SEC violation, sweetheart. And the best part, I have recordings of you admitting to something much, much worse. Something that happened at your last firm that you thought nobody knew about." Elena's face went white as Tyler continued. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to call off the acquisition. You're going to transfer $10 million to my account, and you're going to smile while you do it. Or I send this to the SEC tomorrow morning." Elena started to speak, but Tyler cut her off. "Oh, and Elena, I have recordings of your, let's call them creative accounting practices too." Turns out Sarah wasn't the only one who's been naughty. That's when I started laughing too. I looked at Tyler with an expression I'd never had before and said quietly, "You really should have checked who actually owns the security company that installed those cameras." "Tyler." The room went dead silent. Tyler's smile faltered for the first time. "What did you just say?" I stood up slowly, my hand resting on Elena's shoulder. I said, "You should have checked who owns the security company." Plot twist, little brother. I've known about your recordings for 8 months and I've been feeding you exactly what I wanted you to hear. Every single word. Tyler's phone suddenly went black, then mine, then everyone's in the room. "The question is, Tyler," I continued walking toward him, "do you want to know what I've been recording in your apartment? Because I promise you, it's so much worse than anything you think you have on me." That's when we heard the sirens outside. The sirens grew louder, and through the dining room window, I saw police cars pull up to our driveway. The timing was perfect, but the tension in our dining room made it feel like the sirens were for us. Tyler's hands shook as he frantically pressed buttons on his dead phone. Sarah stood frozen, her face cycling through confusion, anger, and fear. My parents sat speechless, their eyes darting between their 2 sons, like they were watching a match they couldn't comprehend. I pulled out my own phone, which somehow still worked perfectly. I tapped the screen a few times, and suddenly Tyler's voice filled the room from hidden speakers. "Sarah's so stupid. She actually thinks I love her. I've been copying her code for months. By the time I'm done with her, she'll have nothing left to steal." The recording continued. Tyler's voice clear as day, discussing his plans to frame me for various crimes, his schemes to turn our parents against me permanently, and most damning of all, his confession about deliberately sabotaging my previous startup by selling our client list to competitors for $50,000. Sarah lunged for my phone, but Elena stepped between them despite being smaller than Sarah. Elena's calm demeanor made Sarah step back immediately. "Sit down," Elena said quietly. Sarah Sarah sat. Tyler's face had gone from red to white to green. He clutched his stomach, and for a moment I thought he might actually be sick. Right there on my mother's Persian rug. "That's edited," Tyler stammered. "You can't prove anything. Those recordings are fake." I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Really?" "Because I have the originals time-stamped location tagged. Some of them even have video Tyler, like the one where you're in my office going through my investor files while I was at client meetings, or the one where you're teaching Sarah how to hack into my servers. She's a computer science major, Tyler. She already knew how to hack. You were just giving her permission to steal from me." My mother finally found her voice. "Tyler, Sarah, please. We're family. We can work this out without all this drama." I turned to my mother, and years of suppressed anger finally surfaced. "He seduced my business partner for 6 months. He stole my code while planning to destroy my company. He used my investor contacts, my business plans, tried to steal my intellectual property, and you called it drama. You attended his engagement party like nothing happened. You chose him over me just like you always have." "We didn't choose sides," my father protested weakly. "Silence is choosing a side," Elena found herself saying. Everyone turned to look at her. "You've been silent about Tyler's behavior your whole lives. When he copied his brother's college essays and got into the same school, you said imitation was flattery. When he literally stole his startup ideas, you said competition was healthy. You've been choosing Tyler by enabling him for 28 years. Tyler tried a different tactic. Tears. They came easily. They always had. "I'm your brother," he wailed. "You can't do this to family. Think of our relationship." "I am thinking of our relationship," I said coldly. "Brothers don't steal from each other. Brothers don't seduce each other's business partners. Brothers don't try to destroy each other's careers out of jealousy." I turned back to my phone and pulled up another file. "This one's my favorite, Tyler. It's you and Sarah arguing about the embezzlement. Not because you're disgusted, but because, and I quote, 'Those investors better not think they're getting any of my money back.' You knew about every single theft. You didn't care as long as the checks kept coming." Sarah's phone suddenly came back to life, buzzing with what seemed like 100 notifications at once. Her face went pale as she read through them. "The bank accounts, they're frozen. All of them. How did you?" "Turns out when you use investor funds to pay for personal expenses, that's fraud," Elena explained calmly. "The FBI was very interested in those receipts. They called an emergency investigation an hour ago. You're not just unemployed, Sarah, but you'll be in federal prison by morning. And those clients you've been stealing from, they've all been very cooperative with providing evidence, especially TechCorp, the one whose source code you sold." Tyler stood up abruptly, knocking over his water glass. "You can't prove any of this. I'll sue you for defamation. I'll take everything you have." "With what lawyer?" I asked. "The one Sarah's been bribing?" "Oh yes, I know about Jonathan too. His law firm knows now as well. He's also facing charges, by the way. Ethics violations. I don't think Jonathan will be taking your calls anymore." The room felt like it was spinning. My parents looked like they'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Sarah was frantically scrolling through her phone, presumably watching her life fall apart in real time. Tyler stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, standing up and placing a protective hand on Elena's shoulder. "You're going to stay away from my business. You're going to stop spreading lies about me. You're going to get therapy. Real therapy. Not the kind where you manipulate the therapist into thinking you're the victim. And you're going to stay away from me and my company." Or what Tyler snarled, the mask finally completely off. "You'll release some edited recordings. You think you've won? I'll destroy you. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." I pulled up one final video on my phone. It was Tyler sitting in what looked like my office holding a USB drive. "This should do it," Tyler's recorded voice said. "A few changes to his code and bye-bye IPO. He'll think it's a bug. Poor stupid brother." The room went completely silent. Even the sirens outside had faded away. "You recorded yourself planning to sabotage me," I said quietly. "You recorded yourself actually doing it, and you kept the video. Why, Tyler?" As a trophy, Sarah's legs gave out. She collapsed into her chair. "All fight gone. I didn't mean it wasn't supposed to." "To what? Destroy my company? Just make me fail enough to give up? What exactly was your plan?" My mother started crying. Real tears, not the manipulative kind Tyler wielded like weapons. "My babies," she sobbed. "What have you done? What have we done?" "You enabled a sociopath," I said flatly. "And now you're seeing what sociopaths do when they think they're invincible." Sarah suddenly jumped up. "I need to go. I need to." "The lawyers, I have to." She headed for the door, but Elena's voice stopped her. "I wouldn't go home if I were you. The FBI is there with a search warrant. They're very thorough when it comes to financial crimes." Sarah's face went even paler if that was possible. She slumped against the doorframe. I gathered my things and took Elena's offered hand. "We're leaving now. Tyler, you have 24 hours to return my grandmother's ring. I've already filed a police report, so you'll need to explain how you got it." "Tyler, please," Sarah whispered. "I'm your brother." "No," I said firmly. "You're someone who happened to share DNA with me. Brothers don't try to destroy each other's companies. Brothers don't steal intellectual property. Brothers don't commit fraud out of jealousy. You're not my brother. You're just someone I used to know." I turned to my parents. "And you two? I'm done hoping you'll choose me. Choose your golden child. Live with that choice, but know that my future family will never know you. They'll never know the grandparents who stood by while one son tried to destroy the other." As Elena and I walked toward the door, Tyler made one last desperate attempt. "You're recording this too, aren't you? This whole thing. You're just as bad as me." I paused at the doorway and looked back. "The difference is I'm recording evidence of crimes. You recorded yourself committing them. And for the record, this isn't being recorded. I don't need to. Everyone here heard everything. Mom, Dad, Sarah, everyone knows who you really are now. That's punishment enough." We left, and the silence that followed was deafening. Tyler sat at the table staring at his hands. Sarah stood frozen by the door. My parents held each other, looking lost and broken. Elena and I drove to our house in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel as I processed what had just happened. The quiet suburban streets felt surreal after the chaos we'd left behind. When we pulled into our driveway, I saw Elena's investment firm partners waiting. They'd been monitoring the situation and came to provide support. Elena Elena opened the door before I could knock. Her face showed exhaustion, but there was also relief. We hugged without words, and I followed her inside where the partners were celebrating our successful sting operation. How long have you known about the fraud? I asked. Elena sat down heavily, her hand unconsciously moving to her laptop. 4 months. I found the evidence when I was doing due diligence on Sarah's previous company. At first, I couldn't believe it. Even knowing everything Tyler had done, I never thought he'd go that far. The next morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. It was my mother, hysterical. Tyler had shown up at their house at midnight demanding they help him. He'd brought legal documents that were worthless and confused. Sarah hadn't come home, and Tyler had discovered she'd emptied their joint business account before the FBI could freeze it. I met Elena for breakfast to update her. She listened calmly, stirring her coffee. He's going to escalate, Elena said matter-of-factly. Tyler never learned how to lose. This is just the beginning. She was right. By noon, Tyler had called me 17 times. The voicemail started pleading, then angry, then threatening. He claimed he had more recordings, more secrets. He said he'd ruin all of us if we didn't help him. That afternoon, Elena invited me to her office. The walls were covered with timelines, documents, and photographs. It looked like a detective's investigation board. I've been preparing for this for 8 months, she explained. Every move Tyler might make, every lie he might tell, I've anticipated it. She showed me folders of evidence, bank statements showing Tyler's theft from investors, text messages between Tyler and his various criminal contacts. Even recordings of Tyler coaching Sarah to commit wire fraud. The worst part, Elena said, pulling out another folder, is what he's done to your parents. He's been using them as unwitting accomplices since the beginning. 3 days passed in relative quiet. Then Tyler made his next move. He showed up at my office building with reporters causing a scene in the lobby. He accused me of stealing his ideas of destroying his startup. Security had to escort him out, but not before several clients witnessed the spectacle. Elena came to my office that evening looking stressed for the first time since this began. He's trying to damage your professional reputation, she told me. My board isn't happy about the drama. I squeezed her hand. I'm sorry. I never wanted this to affect your work. Hey, Elena said firmly. We're in this together. I knew who Tyler was when I partnered with you. This isn't your fault. But Tyler wasn't done. The next day, he created social media accounts under fake names and started posting my personal information online. He shared twisted versions of our childhood, painting me as the jealous brother who'd always resented Tyler's success. He even posted photos from my old startup, claiming I had stolen the ideas from him. I spent hours reporting the accounts, but new ones kept appearing. Elena remained calm, documenting everything. Let him dig his own grave, she said. Every post is evidence of harassment. A week later, Tyler tried a different approach. He had my parents call me crying about how they missed their son Tyler. My father's voice was coached, obviously reading from a script Tyler had written. Son, we love you both. Why can't you just forgive and move forward? Elena had to leave the room after that call. It was the first time I'd seen her emotional since this all started. Those are your parents, she whispered. They don't deserve this manipulation. Meanwhile, Sarah had resurfaced. She'd been hiding at her mother's house. But that arrangement exploded when the FBI showed up with another search warrant. The resulting confrontation made it onto local news, with videos of Sarah being led away in handcuffs. She called me desperate. You have to help me talk to Elena. This has gone too far. I'll do anything to make it stop. You made your choices, Sarah, I told her. You destroyed your own life. Elena just held up a mirror. My parents were caught in the middle, housing Tyler while trying to process the revelation about the fraud. Mom called me daily, alternating between defending Tyler. He was probably just confused and expressing horror. How could he do that to his own brother? 2 weeks into the chaos, Tyler made his biggest mistake. He contacted Elena's previous employer, posing as a federal investigator, to try to access her employment records. The firm had protocols in place and immediately notified Elena of the attempted breach. This gave us the ammunition we needed. Impersonating a federal officer and attempted identity theft were serious federal crimes. Elena filed a complaint, finally involving federal authorities. Tyler panicked. He showed up at my apartment at 2 a.m., pounding on the door. You have to make her stop, he screamed through the door. I'm your brother. How can you take her side? I called building security without opening the door. As they escorted him out, he screamed threats about ruining my life too. How he knew things about me that would destroy my career. Empty threats, but the neighbors heard everything. The next morning, Elena's lawyers sent Tyler a cease and desist letter. It outlined every incident of harassment, every threatening message, every attempt to damage our reputations. It was comprehensive and damning. Tyler's response was to try to manipulate my parents into taking out a loan to help him. He claimed he needed money for a lawyer to fight Elena's lies. Dad, showing backbone for the first time in my memory, refused. We've enabled you enough, he said. You committed fraud. You recorded yourself doing it. There's no excuse for that. This rejection broke something in Tyler. He started making increasingly erratic decisions. He tried to contact my clients directly, claiming I was mentally unstable and couldn't be trusted with their projects. He moved out of my parents' house and into a motel, dragging his laptop and remaining belongings with him. The FBI got more involved after Tyler's impersonation of a federal officer. This wasn't Elena's doing, but Tyler blamed her anyway. The agent who visited found Tyler living in chaos, eating fast food for every meal while spending his time creating fake social media accounts and recording rambling videos about how he was being persecuted by corrupt venture capitalists. During this time, Elena focused on our business. The stress was affecting her health, and her doctor recommended she take time off. I spent most evenings at her house helping with work and just being present. We didn't talk about Tyler during these visits. Instead, we planned for our IPO, discussed investor meetings, and watched mindless TV shows. But Tyler wouldn't let us have peace. He discovered where Elena's office was and started showing up at the building. He wouldn't approach her directly, just stood in the parking garage watching. It was deeply unsettling. Elena hired private security to accompany her to work. Tyler filmed the security guards and posted videos claiming Elena had hired thugs to intimidate him. The comments on these videos were not what Tyler expected. Most Most people could see through his manipulation and called him out for stalking a businesswoman. 3 weeks into this nightmare, Sarah's life completely imploded. The FBI officially charged her with wire fraud and embezzlement. Her assets were frozen pending trial. Her mother had kicked her out after the FBI raid. She was facing financial ruin from multiple directions. In desperation, Sarah did something unexpected. She went to the FBI and confessed to everything: her fraud, her embezzlement, even Tyler's knowledge of her crimes. She offered to testify against Tyler in exchange for leniency on her charges. Tyler found out about Sarah's betrayal when federal agents showed up at the motel to question him. According to the police report I later saw, he completely lost control, throwing objects and screaming incoherently. The motel manager called police. That was the final straw for the investigation. They arrested Tyler for obstruction of justice based on his attempts to destroy evidence. His parents blamed Elena for this too, even though Elena had nothing to do with it. The night Tyler was arrested, Sarah sent one last message to Elena. It was a video of her standing on a bridge threatening to jump if Elena didn't drop all charges and give her money. Elena immediately called emergency services, who found Sarah at the location and took her for psychiatric evaluation. During Sarah's 72-hour hold, more truth came out. The psychiatrist discovered Sarah had been abusing prescription medication for years, mixing stimulants with alcohol and other substances. Her erratic behavior was partly fueled by substance abuse, though it didn't excuse her calculated theft. My parents aged visibly during this period. They attended therapy themselves, finally confronting how their favoritism had created this situation. "We always gave Tyler what he wanted," Mom told me tearfully. "We thought we were helping him succeed. We were just teaching him that he could hurt people without consequences." When Tyler was released on bail, he found himself truly alone for the first time. Sarah was gone, dealing with her own legal troubles. His friends had distanced themselves after seeing his social media meltdowns. Even his college roommates had filed restraining orders after he showed up at their workplaces, demanding they testify on his behalf. He moved into a smaller motel and got a job at a coffee shop, his first real employment in years. He continued posting videos, but they became less coherent, more rambling. His followers dwindled as people lost interest in his manufactured drama. Meanwhile, Elena and my business progressed. Our IPO was delayed but successful. We raised $50 million despite the family drama. Elena and I had turned the spare office into a war room, planning our expansion. I helped her prepare presentations one afternoon, and for a few hours we could pretend everything was normal, but normal was still far away. Tyler discovered our IPO announcement online and began ordering business magazines to be delivered to Elena's office with disturbing notes attached. "For the success you stole from me, one read. Another said, hope this replaces the company that should have been mine." Elena had to contact every business publication to block Tyler's access. It was exhausting having to constantly defend against these small acts of harassment. But Elena remained methodical, documenting everything, building her case. 6 weeks after the dinner confrontation, Tyler made one final desperate play. He contacted a tech journalist offering to sell his story about the evil brother who destroyed his startup. He provided the recordings he'd made, the ones he thought showed Elena and me confessing to crimes. The journalist, however, was more interested in Tyler's own admissions on those recordings. The article that came out focused on his confession to sabotaging my previous company. Tyler had accidentally given them evidence of his own crimes while trying to frame us. When the article came out, Tyler's remaining support evaporated. The few people who'd believed his victim narrative were horrified by his own words admitting to corporate sabotage. Even online, where he'd found some sympathizers, people turned against him. My parents finally took decisive action. They cut off all financial support and filed restraining orders to protect themselves from Tyler's escalating harassment. It was painful for them, but they recognized that their son needed consequences, not enablement. Tyler's response was to violate the cease and desist order spectacularly. He showed up at Elena's office while I was there for a meeting. He didn't go inside, just stood in the parking lot staring at the windows. When security went out to tell him to leave, he started screaming about how Elena had ruined his life, how she'd stolen everything. The building tenants called the police. As they arrived, Tyler pulled out his phone and started live streaming, claiming he was being arrested for loving his brother too much. The officers were professional but firm. He was violating a legal order. He needed to leave or face arrest. Tyler chose arrest. As they handcuffed him, he looked directly at the camera and said, "Elena, I know you're watching. This isn't over. You took everything from me. My business, my partner, my life. I'll never stop making you pay." But even as he said it, you could see the defeat in his eyes. He'd lost everything. Not because Elena had taken it, but because he'd destroyed it himself with his lies, his fraud, and his inability to accept responsibility. I stayed with Elena that night. She was shaken by Tyler's appearance, but also strangely calm. "I knew it would come to this," she said. "Tyler always has to have the last word even when he's already lost." The arrest was a violation of his restraining order, which meant actual legal consequences. Tyler spent the night in jail and was released on bail the next morning. My parents, finally drawing firm boundaries, refused to pay his bail. He had to use a bail bondsman, adding another financial burden to his mounting problems. The stress of everything was taking its toll on Elena. Her doctor was concerned about her blood pressure and recommended she reduce her workload. I took time off to support her and arranged my schedule to handle more of the business responsibilities. During this quiet period, Elena finally opened up about the depth of Tyler's betrayal. "It wasn't just Sarah," she said one afternoon. "It was every client I ever had, every deal I worked for, every moment of success. He couldn't stand to see you have anything he didn't." She showed me old emails from college where Tyler had documented his plans to undermine me. Professors he'd charmed into giving me lower grades. Internships he'd sabotaged with anonymous complaints. Study groups he'd turned against me with carefully placed lies. "I thought moving to different companies would help," Elena continued. "But he followed your career, applied to the same firms using your recommendations, got into your professional networks, even dated dated your ex-colleagues just to prove he could. The pattern was clear and disturbing. Tyler's entire identity seemed built around taking things from me. Without that dynamic, he didn't know who he was. And now, with nothing left to take, he was falling apart. 2 months after the confrontation, the legal consequences began catching up with everyone. Sarah pled guilty to fraud charges and received 18 months in federal prison, though she'd likely serve less with cooperation. Her testimony against Tyler was part of her plea deal. Tyler's trial for fraud and obstruction was set for the following month. His public defender advised him to take a plea deal, but Tyler refused. He insisted on his day in court, convinced he could make everyone see that he was the real victim. My parents struggled with the decision to testify against Tyler. They'd already provided statements about the sabotage video and Tyler's confession, but taking the stand felt like a final betrayal of their son. Their therapist helped them see it differently. Testifying was about protecting future victims and holding Tyler accountable, not about choosing sides. During this time, our company went public successfully. The stress had been worth it. Elena and I watched the opening bell together, feeling like we'd survived a war. Tyler found out about our IPO through financial news. Someone had tagged him in a congratulatory post. His reaction was to send a letter to the SEC claiming we'd used insider information. The SEC investigated and found nothing, adding another frivolous complaint to Tyler's growing list of legal problems. Even in what should have been our moment of triumph, Tyler couldn't resist trying to cause pain. As our stock price stabilized and business settled into a new routine, our professional relationship strengthened. Elena and I had been through corporate warfare together and emerged as true partners. My parents' granted supervised visits began healing from their enabling patterns. They worked with therapists to understand how their favoritism had created this situation. Tyler's trial itself was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. Tyler's own recordings meant to blackmail us became proof of his crimes. His social media posts showed a clear pattern of harassment. The fraud at his previous company was documented and undeniable. Tyler took the stand against his lawyer's advice. He tried to paint himself as a loving brother driven to desperation by corporate conspiracy. But under cross-examination, his story fell apart. He couldn't explain the sabotage video. He couldn't justify the fraud. His tears, which had always been his weapon, now seemed hollow and manipulative to everyone watching. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge noting the particular cruelty of destroying a family business, and the ongoing harassment sentenced Tyler to 36 months in federal prison and 5 years of probation. He was also ordered to have no contact with Elena, me, or our business. As they led Tyler away, he turned to look at me one last time. The hatred in his eyes was mixed with something else. Confusion, maybe, as if he still couldn't understand how his lifetime of manipulation had led to this moment. Elena didn't attend the sentencing. She was at the office managing our expansion into international markets. When I told her about the verdict, she simply nodded. "It's over," she said quietly. Finally, it's over. But we all knew it wasn't really over. Tyler would serve his time and eventually be released. He'd have to rebuild his life from nothing, hopefully learning from his mistakes, but possibly just becoming more bitter. The industry would remember his crimes. The fraud would follow him forever. Still, as I watched Elena lead our board meeting, I saw hope. She'd survived Tyler's worst attacks. She'd protected our business and our partnership. She'd refused to let Tyler's poison, literal and figurative, destroy our chance at success. Our family would never be what it once was. The illusion of harmony had been shattered, replaced by something more honest, if more painful. But maybe that was better. Maybe facing the truth, however ugly, was the first step toward real healing. As I left our office building that evening, I thought about the different paths the two brothers had taken. I had chosen integrity, building a business with Elena and our team. Tyler had chosen fraud, destroying everything he touched in his need to steal from me. The consequences of those choices were now clear. I was surrounded by success, building a future. Tyler was alone, facing the ruins of the life he demolished with his own hands. It was justice of a sort. Not perfect, not complete, but real. Our employees were celebrating as I reached my car, the normal sounds of a successful company. Through the office windows, I could see Elena and our team working together on our next project. A team united in purpose and ethics. This was what Tyler had tried to steal, what he'd never understood. Real success wasn't about taking from others. It was about building something together. As I drove away, I knew the hard times weren't over. There would be appeals, probation hearings, and the ongoing challenge of rebuilding trust in our industry. But Elena and I had proven we could handle whatever came next. We'd faced Tyler's worst and emerged stronger. The family we'd grown up in was gone, destroyed by Tyler's choices and our parents' enabling. But from those ashes, something new was growing. A partnership based on truth instead of pretense, on accountability instead of excuses. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough.